Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Inner Development Assessment Panel meeting this morning. My name's Clayton Hyam. I'm the presiding member for the meeting this morning. And on the panel, we have Mr. Jean Coltaz, Ms. Karen Hyde, and Councillor Bronwyn Waugh from the City of South Perth, and two people from the Secretariat. And welcome to City of South Perth officers as well. I declare the meeting open at 9:36 and acknowledge we are hosting this meeting on traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the MIDAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with the regulations of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's regulations. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. I have an apology from Councillor Glenn Cridland. There are no members on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Go to part B of the agenda and declarations of due consideration. Are all members familiar with the material before you today? Thank you. Disclosures of interest. I have two disclosures of interest, one from Karen Hyde, an impartiality interest in that she was the chair of the City of South Perth Design Review Panel, which considered, we're talking about a development later on in the meeting, which is the tower. And I have a declaration from Councillor Waugh, and she has an impartiality interest, which she will declare. So I've declared that.
Yes. So in respect to item 3.1 and 4.1, I met with some of the local residents who had contacted me, and I on both occasions went up to where the location was and had a look at the site, but none of the persons are known personally to me.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. You may continue to participate and make decisions on the matter. Right, we'll move to item 3.1. This is the Street Como proposed childcare premises, and there are a number of presentations. I will ask you to stick to your 3 minutes. We will time the presentation, bearing in mind that we have all read the material that you have sent to us, and so once the 3 minutes is up, if you would please wind up fairly quickly. So we'll move to the first presenter, Anna Kirk.
Good morning, panel members. My name is Anna Kirk. I'm across the road from the proposed development. The proposal has galvanised the community on the basis of amenity, with key objections being noise, parking, traffic, movement, access, safety, general amenity and privacy. There's been a 73% response rate opposing the development and 1 for. We're extremely disappointed. The city has recommended to approve the proposal in its current form with conditions and management plans rather than addressing the inherent issues of location, scale and design. Let's be honest, we know that facilities are broadly required. We question whether in this location and now, in simple terms, overstuffs the site. It's a major 2-storey build, a commercial venture, sited on a single residential block in the heart of a wholly residential, narrow street, hard up against adjacent residential properties. It's on an equivalent operational scale for the Birdwood Avenue and Ryrie Street centres recently approved by MIDAP in terms of places and staffing. However, each of those are to be sited spread out over 2 adjacent lots with a landscape orientation at corner sites, with a design resulting in better setbacks, parking provision, accessibility, etc. There's been no real concessions or alterations to this proposal since originally tabled for community response. We acknowledge there's been some changes to the roof line. That's great. Casey will be speaking about the impact still to her shadow. There doesn't seem to have been, from our perspective, an appreciation by the city of the true practical day-to-day impact after development. Residents adjacent to the development and the immediate local area take major fallout, especially at the rear and the sides of the property. The rear being 11 Baldwin and the sides being 42 and 46. The current proposal doesn't meet a reasonable community test and fair expectation of residential protection. In saying that, we acknowledge changes to the City Planning Code gazetted March 24 and its objectives. We're not stupid, we understand it. However, we all believe the proposal warrants more care, attention and due diligence on issues raised by the community in relation to scale, design, site and location. Especially as it's change of use, commercial, bounds about it, it's commercial, and requires discretionary approval. We believe this operation should definitely be on a smaller scale to reduce the impacts. Respectfully request the panel to undertake a closer review of the design scale and site with reference to the Australian position statement on childcare premises. We would like to note that childcare centres provide, we appreciate that childcare centres provide essential services for young families and support development at an appropriate scale and location, but we don't see that in this.
Thank you, Anna. We got other questions of the presenter?
No.
Thank you very much. On to Casey Napier, who's on the line. Casey, where are you?
Hi, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Hear you, but the vision is
Can't
not
see me.
very good.
Okay. If it's okay, maybe I'll just turn the video
sorry,
off
Casey,
so that you can.
Sorry,
and I'll
Casey,
just
the
progress.
sound is not very good.
Connection, it sounds like.
Yeah, it looks like or sounds like a bad connection.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's better. Hang on.
Okay. Is that all right? All right, I'll be really quick. Hi everyone, I'm Casey. I live next door to the development. There's quite a few things that will impact 46 Park Street, but the one thing that I'll speak about today is the substantial shadow cast onto 346 Park Street, which has been discussed in our area.
Sorry, Casey.
Currently, it's
Sorry,
sitting at
Casey, but you're breaking up.
55% coverage,
Casey?
and
Sorry.
yeah, the code deems that 35% or less of
Technology.
the shadow is compliant.
Sorry, Casey, we're just having trouble hearing you. We might have to come back to you if you can fix your connection.
Apologies, you might have to skip me then.
Sorry about that. but it's
Yeah, just
almost
skip me. Yeah.
impossible. Okay, thank you. All right.
Well done.
Unfortunate. All right. Move on to Grant Pusey.
Good morning, panel members. My name is Dr. Grant Pusey. I'm a former scientist and current science teacher. I find myself here today because of my fascination with critical thinking. And that's something that I think the City of South Perth have neglected to exercise while assessing the proposed development. I'm a dad and I use and I support childcare. So let me be clear, this is about location. Specifically, the madness in squeezing a gigantic commercial building in the middle of a dense residential zone. The sentiment in this agenda shows the community has several problems with this, but the city has failed to listen. Firstly, the developer and the city both agree that there is not enough parking because the property is just too small. But instead of reducing the capacity of the centre, the city is just asking for a little bit of extra cash to overlook that shortfall. Extra cash won't magically add more space or add more parking. That sounds like a bribe. And it demonstrates the complete disregard for the residents who will need to deal with the impact of this ignorance. The acoustics modelling is completely biased and hides information that prevents peer review. The most significant red flag is that the consultant, Herring Storer, uses source power levels below the industry guidelines. The city followed up about this only after the community contacted a different professional. Herring Storer responded simply by saying they ignore the guidelines because they know better. Now that is bad science and it's bad business. Of course, these guys are the preferred choice for acoustic modelling since the developers can be guaranteed good numbers. Lastly, the traffic on Park Street will become a nightmare. We already heavily utilise street parking and it reduces the road to a single lane that even our regular rubbish truck has trouble navigating. The childcare centre traffic and peak parking times will create significant noise, congestion, and amenity issues for residents. None of this was considered by the city, who instead claimed that there was now sufficient on-site parking, appearing to forget about the shortfall that I mentioned earlier. That money works quickly. This development should not go ahead. You've already approved a bunch more childcare in more suitable locations. There is certainly no need for more. In July this year, this same city and the same panel heard from a developer claim that there was a significant shortfall found from an analysis of supply and demand. I looked into this because it seems no one else did. It turns out the demand in this analysis came from simply grabbing the numbers of children between the ages of 0 and 5 and making the wild assumption that every single one of them needed a full-time spot in daycare. That's absolute rubbish. This isn't real analysis. It's deliberately misleading at best. Even the city has acknowledged that other childcare centres in the area are available, and they recommended restricting the opening hours of this one. But since there is no urgency, why don't we go the extra step? We should simply wait until the developer buys an appropriately sized block in a more suitable location. Perhaps in one of the nearby dedicated mixed-use zones nearby, where the childcare centres are better suited. Keep the residential areas for residents, keep the greed out. Thank you.
Other questions of? Thank you very much. On to Phil Knight.
Morning panel. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My wife and I live at 11 Baldwin Street and we're extremely disappointed that the City of South Perth has recommended that this proposed development be approved. The proposed outdoor play area has zero setback to the rear, which is the eastern boundary, which we share with the development. Sliding windows in our main bedroom above the bed, I'll refer you to attachment 1 of what I sent to the panel, are often open as they face west to help in the ventilation and cooling of the bedroom. This bedroom is only 1.5 metres from the boundary fence. And I again draw your attention to attachment 2. A lack of any setback will directly impact on our amenity and quiet enjoyment. As recent retirees, one with a cardiac condition, it is our expectation that we have the right to the quiet space of our bedroom any time during the day. This will not be possible with up to 70 children playing within 1.5 metres of the bedroom. Additionally, our alfresco lifestyle will be severely impacted as our dining veranda area is less than 10 metres from the boundary. And again, please see attachments 3 and 4, and is used extensively throughout the year. The existing single-storey residence to be demolished already overlooks our property and is invasive. That's the attachment 4. The 2-storey development will only accentuate the already existing lack of privacy and serve to enhance the accumulated noise levels from both outdoor play areas. The 2.1 metre dividing fence must be masonry to help ameliorate the inevitable noise impacts. And there needs to be 2 to 3 metre minimum landscape setback to place the outdoor play area away from our common boundary and help reduce the inevitable noise impacts. The conditioning allowing up to 70 people in the 2 outdoor play areas cannot be practically enforced. How will the city and JDAP ensure the operator complies, and what will the penalties be for non-compliance? A busy daycare staff expected to not only police the correct number of children playing in the 2 outdoor spaces, but also the correct mix of age groups in these spaces? It's an impossible task. The city's own local planning policy for childcare premises specifies that childcare premises should be compatible with the amenity of the surrounding area. Clearly, this proposed development in the middle of Park Street is not compatible with the residential nature of existing single and group dwellings. There are more than 10 childcare premises, both existing and proposed, that will be operating within a 2-kilometre radius of the site. Most have vacancies. Why does the Como area need another one? The facility is to be open Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. only. Can these hours not be reduced to, say, a more reasonable 9 to 4 to give surrounding residents respite from the constant noise? Finally, we would like to make the point that we are not opposed to responsible development. However, without proper control and management, this is a potential land use conflict. Put simply, it is overdevelopment on the wrong location for a childcare premises. It fails the pub test.
Thank you. Other questions?
No.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Richard Lowe.
Thank you, panel members, and good morning. My name is Richard Lowe. I live at 45 Park Street, so it gives you an idea I'm pretty much opposite this development, just a couple of doors down. I came here by train this morning, so I didn't contribute to the traffic congestion in the city, but traffic congestion is what my main concern is in this area. And I'm pleased to recognise that the City of Perth, City of South Perth acknowledges that there is a problem with traffic in Park Street. It acknowledges the existence of the so-called rat run, people dodging traffic lights at Henley Street and Canning Highway, going up to the next set of traffic lights at Barker Street and Canning Highway. And they also acknowledge that, and someone has said this earlier this morning, that at times that road is reduced to a single lane. So the city is demonstrating good local knowledge of the circumstances in Park Street. Unfortunately, of course, it's not quantitative knowledge, it's just qualitative knowledge. But at least they are aware of it, which is something that the consultants who prepared the traffic impact statement are really not aware of. They make no mention whatsoever of that. And they simply make a wild assumption that the level of traffic in Park Street will be well below the carrying capacity of 3,000 vehicles a day. Well below is what they say, but it's just a guesstimate, and they certainly don't recognise the particular circumstances of this street facilitating the cut through between Henley Street and Barker Street. The other thing that I want to say is that I don't believe it's really fair to expect your panel to make a decision on a matter like this where a key piece of information is just not missing. We don't have any quantitative information on the traffic loads in Park Street. And so we don't really know. I mean, the traffic impact statement says that this will be only a minor impact on the total carrying capacity of Park Street. But when you do the maths, it's actually 10 to 11% of the total carrying capacity. So without knowing how close that carrying capacity is to maximum, we can't really evaluate that. It's clear to me that we need the quantitative information on traffic flows in Park Street for the traffic impact statement even to make sense. So I just think that it's unreasonable to ask you to make this decision when a key piece of information is missing. And I think that it should be recommended. I think that the necessary traffic information, the count of traffic in that street, should be one of the things that you, as a development assessment panel, would want to know about before you made a final decision.
Thank you, Richard. Questions of? No. Thank you very much. Move on to Rory Hindle. Rory, sorry, Rory.
Sorry, was I a member?
100%, otherwise we'll just make it not.
Okay, if we approach together and deliver.
Yeah, just before you do, I'm just going to ask Casey, if she's still online, whether she wants to try presenting again.
Is it any better?
Yes, it is at the moment.
No.
Yes, yeah.
It says it's unstable, so it's probably going to drop out. Please read my submission.
We have done that, but
probably the message here.
did you want to present?
Yeah, if I can.
Go on.
I'll see how far I get. Look.
Sorry, Casey, it's breaking up again.
Firstly, I just want to say I'm not opposed to childcare developments. Oh no. Sorry, guys. Just perhaps part.
Okay, then. All right, thanks. We'll just note that you attempted to make a presentation. Okay, so we'll move now to Rory and Alessandro to make their presentation from the applicant's point of view. And the architect.
Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you, President Member. Good morning, panel members. I'm the applicant of the childcare premises proposed at 44 Park Street. I'm joined by Rory Hindle of Tall Tree Early Learning, making the presentation after me. And we also have Janya Derui, the project architect as well, and also Tim Reynolds, the consultant who's joined via Zoom, who can be able to answer questions.
Okay, thank you.
Firstly, I note the panel has heard from local residents that have voiced concerns on this proposal. I'd like to thank them for taking the time to attend and participate in the process, and hope our presentations assist in addressing the matters that have been raised. I know a lot of content has been covered, and hopefully through question time we can assist with clarifications. This application is recommended for approval by the City of South Perth. The City's reasons for supporting this application are set out clearly within the officer report, which concisely lays out the key considerations and offers a qualitative and sound assessment of the development. In order to get to this point, the design and layout of this centre has matured and been refined on numerous occasions, both through the pre-lodgement phase and during the assessment of the application. Adjustments were made both in response to feedback received from the City's design review panel and subsequently in response to submissions received during the consultation period. We can appreciate that from the City's point of view, that when they are consulted on a proposal, only the tip of the iceberg is visible. Just in terms of the rate of response, which was flagged in one of the earlier presentations, I note that 119 letters were sent out and 17 objections were received. So the rate of response was a little bit lower than that was conveyed. Over the course of this project, this proposal has seen modifications made in order to achieve a number of outcomes, and they include presenting an attractive and well-articulated built form, which is compatible with Park Street and sensitive to neighbouring properties, effectively screen the car park from view of the public realm, maximise the amount of soft landscaping within the front setback area, reduction of bulk impacts to the adjoining properties, and the reduction of overshadowing impacts to the south. The final design before the panel today is supported both by the City and their design review panel, and is worthy of the Metro MIDAP's approval. Pushing design aside and looking at locational considerations for a moment, the RAR confirms that this site meets the location criteria of the City's local planning policy for childcare centres. This site is within an urban infill pocket of the Como area, with densities in the locality increased by the City's local planning scheme number 7, which was gazetted earlier this year. Land is coded R60 on the western side of Park Street and R30 on the eastern side of Park Street. Contextually speaking, there are more multi-unit and grouped housing sites along Park Street than there are single houses. This site is also 150 metres from the defined boundary of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre, which commences from Cowell Street slightly south. The site is also 200 metres from bus stops on Canning Highway, offering a high-frequency transit connection to the city and Fremantle train station, offering staff of the centre with alternative options for transport. The site is also within 800 metres of 3 local schools. The location is clearly appropriate in view of the planning framework. I'll just The potential impacts of this development have been assessed comprehensively through the preparation of a multitude of expert assessments and management plans to address traffic, noise and waste. Each of these have been considered through the application process and their outcomes accepted by the City. We note the City has recommended various conditions to enforce the acoustic recommendations, a reduced opening time to 7 AM and improved fencing materials along the site boundaries, and these conditions are not disputed by the applicant. This proposed facility will deliver 86 childcare places with a high quality environment, which includes the retention of several mature trees.
Please, Alexander.
With all these matters considered, we respectfully request that the application be approved. And if we can answer questions as a group after Rory's presentation, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, thanks for that. We'll wait for questions until later. So Rory.
Dear presiding member and Metro Inner DAP members, my name is Rory and I'm one of the owners of Tall Tree Early Learning. To provide a short background, Tall Tree Early Learning was started 27 years ago by my parents, with Mum utilising her experience as an early childhood teacher. The focus of our centres has always been to provide high quality education and care for local Perth families within the communities in which we operate. We are a small family-owned group and not a national conglomerate like many other operators within the industry. As an owner of Tall Tree, I am heavily involved in the day-to-day running of each individual location, something I am extremely passionate about. We have a number of centres in residential settings, including our centres in Bankshew Grove, Lansdale and Yanchep, and have always maintained strong relationships with these neighbours. We pay close attention to how our centres operate and do everything we can to ensure our neighbours are looked after. With all of our services, we aim to employ local staff, source our food from local growers and retailers, and partner with local aged care facilities, volunteer groups and organisations within the areas in which we operate, ensuring we leave a positive impact and creating a close-knit community feel and environment for the children and families we support. Our vision for Tall Tree Como is to become a support hub for families, a home away from home, place where all the children in our care can grow and flourish, becoming active, positive participants within their local Como community. The children's surroundings will be carefully considered and selected, and we are excited to be able to retain as many mature trees as possible, allowing our children to explore and learn within a natural and engaging playscape. Being the childcare operator, as well as the developer, has ensured we have been able to design a building that is extremely high quality, one which provides a beautiful, safe and nurturing environment for our children, and one we know that will truly outlast another 27 years of us operating. We are not a commercial developer. We are not building this at the lowest cost to just sell on at completion with no regard to the impact it will have decades later. We are childcare operators and have a vested interest in ensuring our building, facilities and landscaping are of the highest quality and remain extremely well cared for, as well as ensuring our relationships and reputation within the community also remain extremely strong. In closing, we hope to become a central part of the Como community for many, many years to come, and hope the panel recognises the clear community benefit we are aiming to create with this project. Thank you.
Rory, questions of the presenters?
Is Mr. Derui going to say anything or?
Adaptation, sounds good.
Okay. Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. Did you undertake any traffic studies for traffic volumes?
A transport impact statement was produced by Uloth and Associates.
With that, I didn't see any current traffic flow figures.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Darren Levy, the traffic engineer, is not here with us today, but in terms of that particular query, the TIS, Transport Impact Statement, was prepared in accordance with the requirements of the WAPC Traffic Impact Assessment Guidelines. And in terms of the Park Street traffic volumes, the estimate is derived based on how much the location site is built out. But under the WAPC Traffic Impact Assessment Guidelines, when a development creates a moderate level of impact in terms of the types of assessments that get done, there's actually no requirement to undertake traffic counts because the traffic is so low. So in short, there was no actual traffic counts undertaken for Park Street, but for that level of assessment, it's not required.
Just another question. One of the presenters said the volume of traffic this facility will generate is 10% of the nominal traffic carrying capacity of the road. What's your comment on that in regard to the timing of the traffic that would be going to and from the centre?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm glad you asked that because I think there's a point of clarification to make. Park Street has an upper volume of 3,000 vehicles per day under livable neighbourhoods. In the traffic assessment, this isn't completely clarified, but the development generates 340 vehicle trips or movements per day. So that's in and out 50-50 split. So it's actually half. So rather than the 10 or 11%, it's actually around 5%. In terms of how that's split throughout the day, childcare centres operate very differently to schools. The peak periods are in the morning during the drop-off period, and then in the afternoon during the pick-up period. The drop-offs commence from around 7 a.m. and they go for about 2 to 2.5 hours through to 9:30 a.m. And it kind of goes up like that, with the peak usually between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Under that traffic impact statement, the critical peak was in the morning between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And the number of trips that would be generated during that period was 60 to 70 vehicles, which is within the moderate level of the impact in accordance with the WAPC traffic impact assessment guidelines.
Other questions?
I have questions. Thank you, presiding member. Some question has been raised from the presentations that we've heard around the acoustics modelling and the relevant baseline and also the potential for impacting, I think, particularly to the property that adjoins at the rear, where the outdoor playground is located. Could you go into some more detail, please, around the modelling that was done, your assessment or your consultant's assessment of the impacts on that particular property, and what steps you've taken to mitigate that impact on their amenity, in connection with their residential amenity, shall we say, given that this is a residential neighbourhood?
Tim, can I invite you to respond to the way the modelling was done and the mitigation measures that were recommended?
Sure. Obviously, the one mitigating measure is the higher fence at 2.1, and that, as the neighbours have requested, is going to be upgraded from a standard colour-bond fence, which for a childcare centre is acceptable, but if a bigger, denser fence makes them happy, that's fine. The comment about our not using the guideline levels, if they'd actually read the next paragraph, we said there was a good reason to actually, in this case, because the ground levels will be used by the 3 to 5 year olds to use those levels, and we did extra modelling, which the council has accepted on those higher noise levels, which was the contour actually shown in one of the presenters that shows that the noise levels at the neighbours is still quite well compliant. Does that answer your question?
I can sort of carry on from that. Thank you. Yeah, so as a result of the modelling, which was conservative, there were a number of mitigation measures that were recommended. One of them was the provision of 2.1 metre height fencing. Compliance was demonstrated based on the colour-bond material, but a masonry material is being required by the conditions of planning approval, which we accept, so there'll be a higher level of attenuation there. In addition to that, play groups will be rotated over the course of the day. So there are limits on the number of kids on the ground floor and upper floor. And that actually coincides perfectly with the size of age groups within the building as well. So there's no issue from an operational standpoint to be able to manage that because there's a bit of feedback. I like the sound of my own voice, but not like that. Because of the size of the activity groups within the building, it's easy from an operational standpoint, and Rory can expand on this, to be able to rotate those groups because they have educators that are allocated to each activity space, and there are weekly play rosters that they follow to make sure that the activity groups are either inside or outside at particular times. And then just a final point to make, the landscape concept prepared by Plan E that forms part of the materials includes an indicative playscape layout. On that indicative playscape layout, it actually does show a landscape buffer along the periphery of the outdoor play area on the ground floor that ensures that children are not playing right next to the boundary. So we've created some separation within the centre of the outdoor play area on the ground floor to ensure that the noise source is far enough away from the boundary to reduce the impact. We've also got enhanced attenuation through a better material for the boundary fence, plus the management of play.
Thank you. Just one further question on the noise modelling. Does that take account of sort of impulsive noises, or is it just a sort of tonality assessment that has been modelled?
The children is based on an L10. So that the impact noises, the criteria for that actually goes up by 20 dB. So we've done studies and they've had these questions before, that they're actually more compliant than the group of children playing at any one time. And as I understand it, the childcare people have policies to bring the children inside if they're, upset and things, to keep that noise to a minimum.
Okay, thank you for that. So that brings me to my next question, which is probably for the operator in terms of behavioural management and play management. And, I've been a mother of 4 myself. I know about screaming, I know about banging, I know about crashing, all of those sorts of things. So how are those kind of impulsive and spontaneous noises that can be really disturbing, how are they managed?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably to touch on, I guess, the play groups as well. And, with children aged 3 to 5, there can be quite a big developmental gap. So we don't actually have them all playing at one time as well. We like to sort of have them in that age groups where they can communicate with their peers and not. You can imagine some of the older children at 5, they're quite big compared to some of the younger children at 3, and find sometimes playing together it can just not work and kids can get injured. So we do have them out at separate times. They won't all be there at the same time as well. But we do have strict behaviour guidance policies as well. Often in a case where there's unsettled children, behaviour issues, being outside in a busy environment is not the best place for them then. So we do bring them inside to have sort of one-on-one care with the educators, where they can have some quiet space to sort of settle their emotions before, I guess, rejoining their friends back outside. So it's not a case of if they're outside screaming, we just leave them out there to continue, bring them inside into a quiet, safer space where they can then resettle it.
Question about overshadowing. Thank you. Unfortunately, Casey's line broke up, but we have had the opportunity to read her presentation that she submitted to it. So that's obviously caused some concern to the neighbour on the southern boundary, I think you've referred to, which I think everybody's assessment identifies that overshadowing is at about the 55% mark. So what steps have you taken, or are there any further steps that you could take to reduce that overshadowing impact?
Charlie, do you mind handing me the overshadowing? Yeah, so in relation to that issue, I guess the first point is that we've made significant and genuine efforts during the application process to modify the development based on the objection that was received from that particular neighbour. Even on the overshadowing diagram, we've included a comparison reference between the design that was lodged versus the design that we have now. And we actually spent a fair bit of time reconfiguring the upper floor so that we could shave back the setback and ensure that we were targeting the overshadowing to areas where it would create less impact based on what we could see on aerial imagery. In relation to Unit 3, number 46 Park Street specifically, the unfortunate situation for that owner is that because their house is constructed with a nil setback along the northern boundary and they're on quite a small lot, their site is more susceptible to overshadowing impact than the normal circumstance. This is a really important consideration in the context of the design principles. So the impacts that they're alluding to would be unavoidable regardless of whether 35% or 56% of overshadowing was created, because the shadow will still fall over the northern part of their site, which encompasses a fair amount of their land area. But the important thing about this is that when you look at the overshadowing diagram, even though there's a variation, the vast majority of the shadow falls on the roof of their house, the roof of their carport, and over an area of their outdoor area, which is at the very northern part of the boundary that doesn't contain any outdoor furniture. So when we modified the development, we looked at the aerial imagery and we saw that their outdoor living area appeared to be south of where their enclosure is, on the eastern side of the house. And we made sure to reduce the shadow impact on that part of the site. In addition to that, we've included the fence line on the overshadowing diagram to show that the northern part of their site would be shadowed by a boundary fence, which would exist regardless of the development anyway. So we've taken serious and genuine measures to reduce the overshadowing impact to a reasonable extent. Anything further would actually not really improve the situation.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Councillor.
I just have a question following on from my colleague, Mr. Coltaz. He asked questions in respect to traffic, and in respect to that, your answer was that childcare centres are different from schools, and then you went in to say about the peak times being dropped off at 7 and 9, with the peak time between 8 and 9, and the same in the afternoon. That seems directly consistent with schools, not different. Can you explain to me how it's different from schools?
Yeah, I'm very happy to answer that question, Councillor Ward. The reason that it's different from schools is because with schools, the bell rings at the same time in the morning, at the same time in the afternoon. and children are dropped off at the exact same time, creating a congestion situation where everyone's coming to the school to meet, to drop their kids off or pick their kids up at the time that school either starts or finishes. Childcare centres don't have a dedicated start or finish time, and parents use childcare centres based on their own scheduling or based on their own needs. So while the curve is like this for pickups and drop-offs, not all 86 children are being brought to the site at the exact same time, or they're not being picked up from the site at the exact same time. So the drop-offs will commence from 7 a.m. and then we'll see that there's a peak between 8 and 9 because that's the peak period of the traffic road network, and then it drops off from 9 o'clock onwards. Based on the surveys that we've seen, approximately 40% of the children are dropped off during the critical peak between 8 and 9, and then the remainder of the children tend to be dropped off outside of those times.
So the peak time is effectively the same as schools, but there's just broader. Okay.
Which inherently reduces the impacts of the road network.
And then the second question that I had was really to the owner, and it was in relation to the noise impacts that Ms. Hyde asked. So in respect to the noise impacts, you have said that what you do is you have a management plan where, bearing in mind we've got 86 children on a fairly small residential block, you are going to rotate those children. Does that mean that pretty much almost at all times there will be children playing outside?
Yeah, so during summer, the period between, we operate off the UV as well, so over a certain level we're not allowed to be outside. So during the summer months we will commence play around sort of 9 through to 10, and then come in once that UV hits a certain rating. But with the rotation as well, so we, like I said, we don't have all the children playing together in certain times. So one group will be inside while the others are playing, and then they'll rotate in and out as well, so they're not mixing all at the same time. But it's not that they're not outside all day. Because of UV, and also activities learning inside, they sleep inside, they have lunch. So it's not.
I understand each group doesn't spend an all-day activity outside, and there will be times when the UV is potentially too much for the children to be outside. But outside of those two things, it seems to me that the groups rotating means that there will always be a group outside, provided that there's no sort of UV or anything. Okay. And then the final question that I have was just in relation to, again, coming back to the noise, and it was a comment that you had made, as you'd said that there was a landscape buffer that you were proposing between the back fence that was intended to mitigate noise. I've done a fair amount of work in the noise space, and I'm unclear of any sort of real evidence that suggests that a landscape buffer is sufficient for noise. Like, I know that, a lot of times we have noise walls and things like that, but I'm unclear as to the reliability of a landscape buffer on noise mitigation.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm glad that you're asking that clarification, because maybe what I said was unclear. It wasn't actually the landscape buffer itself that would create the attenuation. It's the fact that the children are being separated from the fence line. So what it does is it pushes the children's play spaces further away from the fence line, which means the noise source is further from where it's being received. So that, in addition to the noise fence, the attenuation fence, in addition to the management of play, based on the acoustic assessment, will demonstrate compliance with the assigned noise levels at all times.
And sorry, do you have to hand, and it's okay if you don't, how wide that landscape buffer is?
It kind of varies. I've got a printout of it here. It's basically the green area that's along the fence line, and it goes from about 1 to 2 meters. It's in a kind of a curved configuration. The fence line, obviously, childcare centre, straight lines can be boring. It's nice to have.
So it's narrowest, it's 1 metre, and it's widest, it's about roughly 2 metres.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm interested in your experience with staff and how they travel to their current centres that you've got, and what percentage of those staff would take a vehicle, and what percentage might come by public transport?
Yeah, no, interesting question. And probably a more appropriate centre. We have a centre in Manning, and also a centre in the heart of Subiaco as well. And in those inner areas, we have at least sort of 70% of our staff coming by public transport. So where it's a local amenity there.
So how many shifts a day are there for staff?
how many shifts today. So there's an opening shift going from 7 through till 3, and then there's a closing shift as well where they swap over 2 shifts.
So the swap over period, double the cars, staff cars at that time.
Yes, yeah, all that type.
And when you close, I presume, I think the closing time was 6:30. I imagine closing staff would still be there for a while, tying up and sorting out for the next day.
Yeah, what we find is a lot of the children have already left by the closing time. And it's only 2 staff at the end. So as the children will go home, the staff will also go home as we maintain ratios. But if there's no children there, the staff are free to go home as well. So we'll make sure all of the kids are gone and they leave. So it's not 15 staff left at the end of the day. It's only 2 staff that will close at the end of the day.
And how do you manage the servicing and waste collection? Because you're going to have 4 trucks a week coming in straight after closing time, and there could be staff still there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually deal with that one. So the centre, after 6:30, the centre will usually have 2 staff, and they'll be parked in the bays that are within the undercroft. There's a waste management plan that's part of the application materials that includes the sweat path diagram. So there'll be no visitors after 6:30, obviously, because the centre's closed and the children will be gone. The waste truck only relies on the northern 3 parking spaces to perform its turnaround movement. So it means that the car park will be empty where it needs to be empty for the waste truck to be able to perform that movement and undertake its collection. And of course, the collection times need to be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday, or 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Sundays or public holidays, in order to comply with the noise regs. And the collection process is actually quite quick. It takes about 15 minutes, and it's actually quite commonplace for childcare centres to have a couple of collections take place between 6:30 and 7 during the week, and then a couple during the day on a Saturday, for example. That's in essence how it will be managed.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one last one that follows on from the presiding member's question. I think in your request to present, you did highlight that you were keen to see a revision to condition 14.6 in relation to the number of trees to be planted or retained to allow for the waste returning. Could you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, definitely. So that particular condition requires 3 trees be provided within the open air car park area, which is actually our development plan shows 2 trees on the western and eastern side, and we actually did have a concept that had a 3rd tree in the middle, which might be where the condition came from. Because we kind of adjusted the landscaping strip on the northern boundary a couple of times to deal with Australian standards compliance of the parking spaces, and the sweat path movement of the waste truck actually was conflicting with where that half diamond would be for that tree, so we removed it in the end. We don't have a problem with providing another tree somewhere on the site if the idea is to increase the tree canopy. There appears to be space within the front setback area, so even an adjustment of the condition to require the tree be placed somewhere else would be acceptable to us.
Thank you.
Further questions? No. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
To the City of South Perth officers. Do you wish to make any presentation or just to take questions?
I'll just speak briefly to a couple of points beforehand, and then we'll take questions. So just in respect of the overshadowing comments, so the city's assessment was based on the approved plans for that site. The submitter mentioned that there were a couple of northern windows. They don't show on the approved plans, but just on the assumption that they are there, the window that's below the carport obviously would already be shadowed by the carport, so it would be further affected by the shadow cast. And the window above the carport may be impacted. The shadow at that point where it hits the building is roughly 3.5 metres above ground, but that would only be for a very short period because obviously once you pass the winter solstice, the shadow starts decreasing pretty rapidly. So it would be for a very short period if there is a window there and it won't be impacted. In respect of the area north of the patio, that's actually indicated as car parking on the approved plans for this site. So that's why it wasn't considered a sensitive area when we were assessing the overshadow. We only considered the area south of the patio as sensitive space. And in respect of the comments regarding future solar panels, obviously the city can only consider what's there. So whilst it may prohibit future provision of solar panels, we can only assess what's on the site at the time. In respect of the requested amendment to condition 14, we don't think it's necessary. We feel that a third shade tree could be provided adjacent to the tandem bays, which would satisfy that third tree requirement if necessary. So yeah, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the officers?
Yes, just mentions made of Park Street being a rat run. What steps have the council taken in the past, if any, to discourage that street to be favoured as an alternative to Canning Highway?
I'm not aware of any active steps that have been taken at this stage. When we referred the matter to our engineering team, they acknowledged that there likely was some impact from rat running. However, they didn't indicate that it was at such a stage that any steps had been taken to reduce that impact yet. And I can also, at the same time, speak in terms of the traffic counts that we do have. Unfortunately, they're quite outdated from 2001. But the traffic volume for this portion of Park Street was recorded as 1,634 vehicles per day on average.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Thank you for answering that.
Good question.
Just a further question. The cash in lieu monies, where would it be anticipated that be spent? Generally, these are required to go into a trust fund and spent on traffic management or provision of parking bays, for example, in the Burge. Has any thought been given to that?
At this stage, no. But we do have a parking management, cash in lieu of parking policy, which outlines the areas where it needs to be spent. So it would be considered at some point in the future with the funds available, what measures can be implemented in the immediate locality to assist with issues with parking and that.
Through you, Chairman. Was there any thought about putting in a couple of parking bays in the Verge? I mean, already the residents say that there is on-street parking. It indicates that there's a shortage of parking to the existing residents and group dwellings that are there. So was any thought given to, say, using this money and any others that have been recovered for, say, putting in a couple of Verge bays in the locality?
The city doesn't generally support provision of parking within the Verge areas, so no, it's short.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, you just referred to the city's payment in lieu of parking policy, and that is an issue that has been alive within obviously the local government, and I am of the understanding that funds received under that policy are only required to be spent anywhere within the district of the City of South Perth, and there's no locational criteria as to where those funds are to be spent. Is that correct?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, that's correct.
I just want to come back to, I suppose, the central concern of the residents. And I want to get your views on whether or not you believe there is or is not an impact on the amenity of the neighbours with this as a result of this development.
Well, with all development, there will be some impact. I guess the question is whether it is an acceptable level of impact. Has the impact been sufficiently mitigated such that it won't have excessive impact on neighbours? We've obviously looked at the proposal, considered the expert reports prepared. We're of the view that the impacts can be managed to an acceptable level. Obviously there will be noise, but it's not going to exceed requirements. The measures that have been put in place, both physically and through management plans that we provided, will acceptably mitigate this. Essentially, we consider that childcare within a residential area is a complementary land use. It is a suitable place for care of children. It's a nice residential amenity. And in this instance, we believe that the impacts have been mitigated sufficiently. Built form as well in terms of shadow cast and impact on the street set character. We feel that it satisfactorily addresses all the requirements and it essentially is very compliant in terms of an ARCOS assessment as well, in addition to it being supported by the design review panel.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay, thank you, officers. We'll move to the item itself. There is a recommendation for approval with conditions. Is there a mover for the published recommendation? I'll move. Taz? Is there a seconder for that? Motion lapses for want of a seconder. Is there an alternative motion?
Presiding member, I wonder if this might be a matter for deferral to allow for some further resolution of outstanding matters associated with the overshadowing impact, to confirm the appropriate fencing materials which have been talked about but not confirmed, and to review the ground level play area setback to be more consistent along that rear boundary with the aim of ameliorating noise on adjoining neighbours to the rear of this particular application.
So you are moving deferral for a period of up to 60 days?
Yes.
For the applicants to review the overshadowing impact.
Yes, to confirm the appropriate fencing materials to ameliorate noise impacts, and also to review the ground level play area configuration and setbacks to increase them to reduce the impact further of noise on adjoining neighbours.
Okay, that's a deferral motion. It's procedural motion, so I'm going to get a seconder or seek a seconder for that motion. It's a seconder for that. Oh, I'm happy to second that then. So that now goes to the vote. I'll put that motion all in favour. Against? I got the casting vote. I'm casting in favour of deferral. So that's deferred for up to 60 days for those matters to be addressed, and it will come back to this panel at some other point. Okay, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attendance. We'll move on to
I was actually looking for
We're still on. Still on microphone. Still no. We're still on microphone.
thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item, which is in two parts. There is no presenter that I'm aware of for this. Okay. The officers, did you want to make any comments on the Aquinas College alterations and additions? No, just asking off if they want to make any.
Sorry, through the chair, no, the city doesn't propose to make any comments, but we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And all right, and I think we can do questions of both at the same time. Delia, do you want to make any comments at this stage in relation to that item?
I thought it would be worthwhile, Mr. Chairman, just to give an overview as to the role of our RA, because it's a misunderstood situation, let's say. So if I may, just a couple of minutes, and then of course open to any questions.
And when you've done that, we'll then go to get a movement second for each one separately. All right, thanks, Delia.
So my name's Delia Negley. I'm a planning manager with the Land Use Plan Division of Lands and Heritage, and we're responsible for the West Australian Planning Commission's Responsible Authority report. So the development site is zoned urban under the Metropolitan Region Scheme, the MRS, but it sits on a lot that abuts the Canning River with the foreshore reserved parks and recreation, and most relevantly, a portion is a designated development control area under the Swan Canning Rivers Management Act. And so consequently, under the MRS, development requires a separate approval with the WAPC Responsible Authority rather than the local government, as is ordinarily the case where development is on urban zone land. So that's our role. But what it does is enables any regional implications to be very specifically looked at. Considering whether it's consistent with orderly and proper planning and preserving the amenities of the locality, which you would have read in our RA. So our assessment concluded that the main regional considerations are to do with the impacts on the river foreshore and the state heritage listed building, being the admin building and the chapel at Aquinas College, and because these areas are located at considerable distance from the development site, the conclusion is that the impact is minimal. However, just to ensure that any impacts are managed, because despite the distance, there can always be some level of impact. To minimise that, we've recommended 2 conditions, which we feel complement the city's recommended conditions under the local planning scheme.
Thank you very much. Questions of the officers, whether from South Perth or the department?
Don't have any?
No. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll move to item 3.2A, which is the local government fund. Is there a mover for that? Yes, Councillor Ward, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's hard. Councillor Ward.
I don't have anything really to say to this one.
I just think it's been a nicely designed development. I think it's something that will support the educational purpose of the school. It's something which a lot of their competitors have. So I'm, feel that it's a contemporary means of supporting broader education for children, and I think it sits well within its context.
Look, I'll just reiterate that. I think seems to be the money around for these sorts of things. But I know Hales School and a couple of others have got rather large redevelopment plans in there that have come before panels like that as well. So this is a very high standard of design to the renders for the plans that have been provided are very, very good. I think the result is going to be fantastic, and it'll change a few, allow the car parking areas to be reconfigured, and more importantly, there's no impact on surrounding residents unless they don't like, unless some of the kids are going to be playing very loudly and very poorly. So I'm supporting.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Yes, I support it as well. And no rebuttal, is there? So I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I'll move to 3.2B. Motion to approve with conditions. Is there a mover for that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comment necessary?
No, I think we'll just reiterate.
No.
what I said.
Okay, thank you. I'll then put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Proposing that we do now, before we move into item 4.1, is I'm going to seek move in a second for an adjournment for a period of, what do we need? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. And take advice. Up to 30. Take advice. So is there a mover? Yes.
I'm happy to move a procedural motion,
I'll
presiding
second
member.
that.
Second. Okay, thank you. All right. All in favour? Carried. Thank you.
I didn't think it was worth presenting because the scheme actually was very well done. So I thought
Being unmute, we're back on stream.
I'll resume. No, okay, we will resume the meeting. I'll now move to item 4, or 4.1, which is the amendment to the 32-storey mixed-use development in Mill Point Road, South Perth. I'm going to propose a deferral for a period of probably up to 60 days again. It's sufficient, I would think so, up to 6 days. To 1, to enable the City of South Perth to provide a more comprehensive analysis of the applicant's Form 2 amendments in the context of Judge Parry's decision in SAT Edge Holdings and the Metro Central JDAP, brackets 2020, close brackets, WASAT, WASAT 35, comma, and in view of the changes to the planning framework, full stop. 2, to seek further legal advice from the department on the jurisdiction of the DAP to consider the Form 2 application before it. I'm seeking a seconder for that. Thank you, Karen. Okay, I'm going to put that motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Move on to wind up the meeting at Part C. There's a number of CAT applications listed there. Very general business. Thank you, and I'll close the meeting at 11:11. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.